during the tail end of SecCom was Hercynia, and namely its Hercynian crisis. Because along the tread of humanity's progress to conquer the stars, this was the first intelligent life form humanity had ever bumped into. A pseudo-hive mind moth-like species that lived within massive internal jungles on continents that span the entire planet. And of course, the first time humanity bumped into another source of intelligent life outside of itself in this cold, harsh universe, it was a flora and fauna problem. You gotta wipe the slate clean for those colonists. Hi, hello, and welcome back to Lancer, our favorite mech tabletop RPG where the burn just hurts so much. And with that burn, we are talking about Genghis, the specific Mark II variant on the World Killer design originally under Harrison Armory. The Genghis under Harrison Armory, the World Killer being under GMS technically. It's in that transition period. But the 8th mech in our lineup, finishing up the 2nd column with our next Harrison mech. A reminder for this lineup, we alternate the different manufacturers and head down their respective lists alphabetically from the core book. At least for the initial sweep, we're finally finishing the 2nd column. But to the chassis itself, this is burning. This is setting fire to everything and everyone. But really, not just the burn mechanic, but if you wanted fire, it's the pyro, it's the flamethrower mech, it's the chassis that you want to use the burn mechanic for on everything. Because usually burn's scattered throughout some of the other lists here and there, but the Genghis is the burn. You're gonna feel it. But now onto the stats. So, high heat cap, high armor makes sense for what it's doing and under Harrison Armory. The health kind of hurts, but you know, enough armor to actually take the hits when heading in close, then being able to use the flamethrower and other heat effects to the point of not going over your cap. So high armor, high cap, works well. Now when it comes to the weapon mounts, this is a Harrison Armory chassis. You have a flex mount, main mount, and heavy mount. You've got options, or at least enough mounts to carry a super heavy and then one extra to spare. But as with much of Harrison Armory, you're a walking arsenal. And on to the chassis traits. Now when it comes to the Genghis, its traits are relatively simple and kind of understandable, but they are still great. Starting off with Insulated, where you have immunity to burn damage. It's this way, immunity to burn damage. Burn itself, burn is carried over in one of the other videos. It'll probably be here somewhere in a card, but it sucks, it stacks, it carries over through different rounds, and it's just also the initial hit. It's not just at the end or start of a turn, it also is carried over in the initial tick of damage. So that stacks fast. That hurts a lot. So being able to have a trait that makes you immune to all of your area of effect if you accidentally get caught in it is fantastic. Or, you know, someone else hitting you because you're built to withstand this kind of heat. Next one's a bit more situational with Emergency Vent. So whenever you take structure damage, so you actually take through a whole health bar, you entirely vent your heat. No taking stress, it just clears your heat automatically. So one bad thing just actually adds a little benefit. But with that, we're already to the core power. Its core power being named TBK Sustained Suite, and its active being Exposed Power Cells. So while it's an active needing a quick action to actually activate, it is still technically passive, you just need to trigger it ahead of time so it triggers. So you activate it, and then the next time the triggering effect occurs, it happens. You can't decide it at the moment of the triggering effect. That being the next time you exceed heat cap, you release a burst 3 cloud of burning matter from your mech, venting from your power cells, your core reactor. This incendiary matter remains until the start of your next turn. All characters caught within it count as invisible except to you, and characters other than you within the area of effect take 2 burn and 2 heat at the start of their turn or entering the area of effect for the first time. Now once this effect ends, the next round's effects continue. Carrying on the initial area, it's now this wave of heat as the heat itself is still initially dispersing, leaving a bit of a smog, giving soft cover to every target. Each character is still remaining within the area receiving that soft cover, which you ignore, just like you ignored the invisibility previously. Then on to the start of your next turn after that it ends. Now when it comes to exposed power cores, yes, it's a nice burst damage and heat, giving off to everyone else around you. But you get to ignore the invisibility and soft cover all of them get, and you can still stand within that space and gain the invisibility and soft cover. So still benefiting from invisibility and soft cover when you're standing in it, and no enemy that is benefiting from it benefits when against you. Also, that's burn. That's not just energy damage, that is sticking with them and ticking over until the next rounds until they put it out. Now with finishing off the chassis, you move into LL1 with the Krakatoa Thermobaric Flamethrower. Because of course you have to kick off with the initial flamethrower, you are the pyro. But a very simple weapon that's heavy close quarters, it has a range of cone 5, does a flat 1 energy damage, and then a flat 4 burn damage. you are setting so many people on fire, not to mention objects and terrain. The fact that this LL1 means that anyone can just take a 1-level dip into Genghis and pick up a flamethrower right out the gate. You don't even have to wait till you get to the chassis to get some of the other traits. Just picking up the license initially gives you a heavy flamethrower. Now, where the previous thing was a weapon adding to the heat, we have something that helps with holding it back, and further spreading it to your enemies with explosive vents. Picking it up with 2 system points. Whenever you would clear all heat or take 1 stress towards your reactor in the heat cap, you release a burst 1 explosion similar to your core power, dealing 2 heat and 2 burn. Just like the core power. No quick action, nothing in addition, it's just an additional effect on top of venting all your heat, or taking stress. You can, however, only do this once per round if you have effects just go through your heat cap multiple times, or you clear it and then take enough heat to go over your cap again. But not bad having another minor form of the core power as just an additional add-on. Not to mention being able to throw this onto other chassis, it's just a system. It's not tied to the core chassis itself. So if you're running a Tokugawa. Moving right along into LL2, we have an explosive package similar to the Barbarossa with Havoc charges. So like a lot of the mines or deployables within Lancer, you have the grenade thrown version and then the mine planted version. For 2 system points, we kick off with a napalm grenade, which is a little more than just a normal grenade. It's not just, oh, it's splattering the area with napalm. You'll see. First off, just like normal grenades, a quick action to throw at 5 different spaces. Then it deploys in a direction you choose, then firing in a 5-foot line a napalm. You're not chucking just an explosive or something leaving out this napalm or gas or something to initially ignite. You are throwing out a full flamethrower. Again, it's not a human-sized hand grenade. You're throwing a whole mechanism that can then decide to shoot in a specific direction after you've tossed it. But any targets caught within this 5 line must make an agility save, taking 2 burn on a failure and 1 burn on a success. And that directional line carries over to the Havoc mine. So after planting it, if anything goes over it or adjacent to it, another line 5 sprouts up in the direction of the initial triggering target. This one, however, being able to have a firm base and not just being the throwable one, does a little bit more. Not necessarily in mechanics, but enough of a kick. Agility save like last time, but this time 4 burn damage or 2 on a success. And again, burn stacks, either from other allies you have, more of these mines or explosive placed next to each other, or hitting them with your flamethrower afterwards just to keep on taking that burn damage, just to see that counter go into the double digits and the hope leave your GM's eyes. Though sadly with most grenades this is limited to, so only 2 uses before a full repair. Can't just spam the field with it. Next is the auto cooler for 2 system points. This one's a simple one. You gain 1 new protocol tied to the auto cooler itself, and as long as you don't move, don't take damage, and don't exceed your heat cap again, you clear all heat at the start of your next turn. Wiped the slate clean. Where everything else we've had so far is just adding to the burning, with maybe clearing heat as a side thing, this one is actually trying to regulate the internal heat, which you might need for the next weapon, because we're kicking off LL3 with the Plasma Thrower. Now with the Plasma Thrower, you kick off with 2 options of attack, so you have a general line attack, and you also have a cone attack. While your cone's a bit shorter, it's still a 7-space cone, and then the line itself is 10 for a bit more of an accurate shot or a little more distance. As a part of the attack, you deal 1d6 plus 2 energy damage, and a flat 6 burn, all coming from a super heavy close quarters flamethrower. On top of just taking 4 heat to yourself after just using the weapon, it has an additional special effect, so every time you fire it, within 3 of the spaces that you have affected, so either in the cone or the line, you can leave burning hot white flames for the entire scene, which if anyone starts their turn in there or decides to move in there for the first time on their turn, they take 1d6 energy damage. No save, and it lasts the whole scene. And you can keep doing this every time you fire the weapon. Not a temporary thing, not something that can be put out like the other burn effects, this just lasts for the scene. That is just a burning white spot. On the scale of a size 1 mech, because it takes up an entire space. This is for investing within the Genghis, investing in being the pyro, instead of just taking 1 level for the basic flamethrower. You've got the Plasma Thrower. Here's some options, here's a line, here's a cone, here's even more burning outside of your initial flamethrower. And why not just burn the landscape, leave it lasting for the whole scene? But as with any good Harrison Armory chassis, we have the crimes associated with the mechanism. There's the obvious fire and attacks during the Hercynia crisis and the use against other soft targets. But now let's talk about AGNI, because you have an NHP on board with the AGNI class NHP. For 3 system points, you now have access to the NHP, the AI tag, and the AGNI protocol. And this is also the only limited NHP I've seen. You only get 1 use of it before full repair. Once per scene after activating the protocol, at the end of your turn, you release a Burst 2 wave of heat again, similar to the core. Within this Burst 2 wave, all characters affected must make an engineering save or be pushed back 2 and take 2 burn, or push back as far as possible if there's something in between. And then until the end of your next turn, you also have soft cover you can benefit from once again. Also, because it's already the end of your turn, you just have put yourself in soft cover and knocked your local enemies away. It's a good get off me. Because the others sure cause burn, but they also get to benefit from the invisibility and the soft cover. This one you just get to chuck them out. But AGNI themselves are not well. And not well for an NHP, which is saying a lot. So to talk about why AGNI is that way, namely going back to its origins as one of the later NHP. So not entirely just randomly spawned, but another core line manufactured. So from the USB under SecCom, the Union Science Bureau, taking all this data gathered from their warfront within the Hercynia crisis. CompCon, AI, targeting systems, just anything that's scattered across, and also individual reports from people in it. Now all of this data on the warfare, TBK, and Xena side of the egregorians was put in direct contemplation of a data construct within an NHP of an egregorian overmind that was captured and vivisected. They forced a small pocket of the collective conscience to relive the events of its initial war over and over and over again to learn new ways of defending itself against the heat. Now, AGNI itself, before it was added into the chassis, was a great use in the R&D department of Harrison Armory, especially right out the gate. All the heating systems you see on the Genghis, especially the Mark II, all come from this program. The cooling vents, the flamethrowers, anything that either enhances the burn or resists it from affecting you. All of this contemplated from a data construct that was then given free space to think outside of itself and exist in multiple flashbacks at the same time. But the modern form of it, which was just packaged up and cloned to be sent out onto the front of Harrison Armory, is described as cold and functional, with exceptions. So AGNI itself functions normally, but then it begins to recite memories, things that it shouldn't really know or be set within its initial programming, things from that mind. And occasionally, direct command rejection, just going against whatever the pilot or owner is describing. And a few days later, after those initial signs, it'll attempt to self-emancipate. It will attempt to free itself. So after those few records, Harrison Army recommends that, unlike the cycling of like every decade or so or 5 years related to the average NHP, when it comes to AGNI, it's every 6 months. Because it's roughly around that point it begins to remember what it was based off of, it was taken from and forced to experience. It is reliving an internal hell constructed for it by a manufacturer. It is a horror story. And also is one of the few cases of an NHP, whenever it realizes something, immediately wanting to break out, a reliably unstable NHP. And not in the sense of the intimidating form of Osiris wanting to reach that form of godhood to delete parts of reality. This one's just trying to escape. AGNI just wants to be freed of this. It's got drama. But that's the end of the licenses, with AGNI itself being one of the standouts alongside the plasma thrower, because, yeah, it's the pyro. That's what it is. It's the pyro. It is the scorcher. It's the one setting things to burn, going to spread that burn damage, which is relatively rare amongst the other licenses, to just all of the galaxy. That's the thing. It's foliage and fauna management. Going against soft targets, having multiple attacks that can go down in a line, not having to rely on a cone and hitting splashing doorways, going directly down streets. SecCom had a problem when it came to Hercynia, and GMS fixed it. And when it comes to Harrison Armory, they improved it. Because it's not just Hercynia that the World Killer was meant for. Everything tested on Hercynia, other black sites kept down there, mech chassis and blueprints that have never seen the light of day and are hopefully buried for the remainder of time, were meant to be used on Union itself. Because the Hercynia crisis wasn't just one planet, it was the buckling of the diaspora. Great imperial war machine that was SecCom was beginning to dwindle, its sparks fading. But this is Genghis. This is Harrison Armories. When the galaxy is your fuel, let it burn. Thank you for watching the video over Genghis, another licensed video, and heading down the second column of our entire list. We're getting there. And by getting there, we actually finished this. I started writing this notebook around the time through Spell-A-Day, and I was gonna do a, spellcasting fashion video that was a bit more in-depth on components. But no, finally filled out, finishing off with Genghis. And then this, I needed an extra page, so I found a slight empty spot. That's what the note's for. But once again, thank you all for watching, a thank you to my patrons, and have a nice day.